Josh, Nick Saban whining about the pace of play. He's done this before, and then wanting an NIL salary cap. Let me get your thoughts on that. What do you think about? Is this just whining, or does he really care about the game? Both.
Well, I think it's I think it's partly whining. I think it's looking for some other competitive advantage to what he has done best in the past. I will give Nick Saban credit in that he has been consistent with this. So I do think Tennessee is now a part of this conversation. That's because Tennessee has changed. Nick Saban didn't like this when Hugh Freeze and Ole Miss were going up tempo on offense and creating problems for Alabama's defense. He didn't like it when Texas A&M with Kevin Sumlin and Johnny Manziel were able to do it because it created problems for his defense. So he is looking for a competitive advantage. The greats look for a competitive advantage, no matter what their advantage is. When you see great athletes that complain to officials, they may be better than everybody else. They're still going to complain to officials, work the officials, because they're trying to create some kind of competitive advantage. So I don't think what Saban is saying now is specifically about Tennessee. I think it's about that style of play, which Tennessee is now a part of. So Tennessee is now in the mix. Same with when he talks about the opponents that Alabama would face every year. Yeah, it's a compliment to Tennessee that he's saying, hey, why do we have to play Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee? He's fully aware of why those three teams would be it. But, if Tennessee were playing Alabama, LSU, Auburn every season, then Tennessee fans would be saying, this is absurd. Why are these our three opponents? I know a lot of fans that are very happy to have the idea of Vanderbilt and either Kentucky or South Carolina, not because they cherish those matchups, because they cherish those wins. So Saban is looking for a competitive advantage. He is number one in the game. He's also probably still the most hated coach in the game. So when he makes these kinds of comments, it is going to ruffle feathers, especially in Knoxville.
Let me ask you this. I want to change gears a little bit, and Dennis Dodd, who I like, and I have zero problem with him, but he said that he had heard whispers that Nico, and by the way, we're just in case we mispronounce his name, we've got him ready.
Iamaleava.
Thank you, Nico. But the whispers that he wasn't worth the $8 million that he was being paid. Let me just ask you, before we get into expectations and fair expectations for year one, what in the world could he do to not live up to expectations in the 2.5 months he's been on campus?
Yeah, I don't know what Dennis Dodd thinks the expectation was to this point. Like, at least allow him to go through a full practice at the University of maybe that should be on the table before we start to discuss living up to expectations. Also, the blurb from Dennis Dodd seemed to imply that Nico's expected to come in and start this year. Nobody in Knoxville thinks that's the case. Nobody. Could he end up being the starter? Yes. But Joe Milton is the expected starter at Tennessee this upcoming season. So, I mean, we can argue, is a player worth this amount of money or not? But the way it's written is based on what people are expecting on the field from Nico right away, and that's just not true. So it was a silly, weak report. If you're going to put something like that out there, you need to have something to go with it to explain. But Dennis Dodd did not do that. So I honestly have no idea what he's talking about. I've not heard any whispers that people in the program are saying, you know what, wish we didn't have this guy. So worth, I mean, we can have that kind of debate about anybody. Are they worth what they make? But as it applies to expectations on the field for Nico, there's nothing to point to because he hasn't even practiced yet as a quarterback at Tennessee.
Now, I can tell you that during Pruitt, Dooley, and Butch Jones, people would ask me, Tennessee's in good shape now, right? And I'd heard stuff behind the scenes that I wouldn't report yet. And I'd just go, we'll see, and I would just be nice. But I mean, I have heard zero that Nico has not lived up to expectations. In fact, I've heard he showed up and he was taller than a lot of people thought. I've heard the ball pops out of his hand, that he has the fantastic arm you would expect. Sometimes when you see it in person, it can be a little different. But everybody I've talked to that's watched him throw, he's been fantastic. Which I want to ask you, Josh, just a general question. What are fair expectations? And I want to ask the same thing at Caleb here. What are fair expectations just in year one? When the bowl game's all said and done, you look back and you say, he achieved what he needed to achieve.
We're talking about Nico?
Yes, not Dennis.
Yeah, I mean, like, the hope is that he doesn't play all that much, that he's playing late in games where they're gonna blow out some opponents, and, Joe's able to stay healthy and be the guy and be productive all season long. So, Joe in mop up duty put up some numbers and he took care of the football and he threw some bombs. And I think that's probably what you're hoping to see out of Nico is that he's able to flash that potential with some younger players. So late in games, you have a long touchdown pass to Nathan Laycock, and you're able to see the ability that everybody's talked about with Nico running the offense against what will be weaker competition. If Joe either doesn't work out or is injured, well, that changes the conversation in terms of what the expectation would be. If that were to happen, then I think you're hoping that Nico is still able to show that promise, but is able to do enough to build on into the future to show that you can win around him, that you can build around what he is at that position, because he's made up like a quarterback that should run a Josh Heupel system with his arm, his quick release, his mobility, everything that he has is essentially what you would draw up to be a Josh Heupel quarterback. But expectations for 2023 right now should be very low for Nico because he's not expected to play that much.
Mr. Jones agrees with you, and I'm going to go to Caleb. Mr. Jones says, take over and blowouts and get his feet wet, learn and grow. I think he's going to start by the end of September, but that's just me. I'm definitely in the minority. Caleb, what are fair expectations at the end of the year that you look at it and you say Nico has accomplished what he needed to do in year one?
So I'm mixed, and I actually want to get to Josh on this because I would say on paper it would be exactly what you just said. You know, he comes in mop up duty, racks up stats and yards, looks really good. At the very least, does it? I can't say what would be like he's in good shape, but I can see where he would lose ground, which I would be like if he's not the second string quarterback, if he's behind Gaston Moore or Navy Schuler, then we have a conversation. But the only reason I'm mixed on it, just is the days of, and it seemed like only like a 20-year thing that coaches did, but are the days of redshirting a quarterback, you know, with like, oh, we're not going to play him much because we want him to redshirt since he's just a freshman, so we can have him for an extra year. Are those days over? Is it kind of like, would Josh Heupel do that with Nico, or does he pretty much expect if Nico's good, he's going to leave after his junior year anyway, so there's no point to try to redshirt him to save him for another year?
Yeah, like if Nico needs a fifth year in Knoxville, then he probably will not have lived up to expectations. So if you want to go long term with what is expected out of him in Knoxville, so I would not worry too much there. Also, he's your number 2 guy, so part of what you're doing is getting him ready if he's needed for whatever reason. If he's needed at a later point in the season, this isn't a spot where, you know, like you go back to Peyton Manning when he arrived. At the time, the thought was, hey, maybe he could redshirt, but then they have those injuries happen quickly, and they have to start going down the depth chart. You go one spot, and it's Nico at number 2. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry that much about redshirting with star players. If there's a reason, like if a guy arrives with an injury and they're trying to overcome that, and you're thinking, okay, they may not be ready until mid to late October. How ready can they be as a freshman? But in this spot, I am not thinking about where we are in 5 years with Nico.
This is completely hypothetical, guys. But are you guys both telling me, and Josh, I'll start with you, that if Nico behind closed doors isn't at least pushing during some point in the season, and I'm assuming Joe Milton's completely healthy, that's an okay year. If he just adds 20 pounds and he comes out next spring, 2024, and he's a bigger guy and he knows the system, that's an okay year. I expect a guy of his talent level and what I've seen from Joe Milton, other than the Orange Bowl, I expect him to push him, but I feel like I'm really in the small minority here.
Well, maybe. I think you want him to push in the idea of, okay, if he's needed, we don't expect much of a drop off. But what you don't want to create, in my opinion, is a schism, a debate of, okay, do we have the right guy out there? You want Joe to do everything that you expect him to do, and with his time now running the offense, everybody kind of rallies around him. He is the next leader of the offense, while everybody would still have confidence in Nico if he's needed. A comparison that's been made and makes sense is when Trevor Lawrence arrived at Clemson, Kelly Bryant was the guy, but everybody recognized the talent was so overwhelming with Trevor, and there were some limitations in what Kelly Bryant was able to do. He was a quality college quarterback, but not a difference-making talent. Trevor Lawrence was a difference-making talent and helped them win a national title. Joe Milton does have high-level talent. It's more about does he show on the field all that they see in practice and all of the tools that he possesses? Can he turn that into high-level play in SEC games? If they believe that he's going to do that, then he should be the guy, and you get Nico ready to be your quarterback in 2024. So that's why it comes back to Joe. Look, if Joe still shows problems that we saw in 2021, then yeah, this becomes a real conversation, and Nico could absolutely push.
Yeah, Josh, it's funny you brought up Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant because you said something earlier that I've told Dave, which my line has been Nico. It's like if you created a quarterback in a lab to run Josh Heupel's offense, it would be Nico. It reminds me.
You guys did kind of echo each other on that. Caleb said that before. Sorry.
It reminds me of Tim Tebow falling out of the sky into Urban Meyer's lap. Like you could not create a better quarterback to run Urban Meyer's spread offense than Tim Tebow. So with that said, do you see similarities with this with Joe Milton to Nico as there were with Chris Leak to Tim Tebow, where in 2006, everybody knew Tim Tebow was going to be the future legend at Florida, but Urban Meyer stuck with Chris Leak. I'm not saying Tennessee's going to win a national championship this year, but stuck with Chris Leak, brought in Tim Tebow for situational plays, and then Tim Tebow was ready to take off the next year. Do you see that similarity more than Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence?
Well, the thing with Tebow is that, yeah, he was perfect in situations. The arrival of the jump pass and his power running that he was able to bring into the offense is something that Chris Leak did not have at that position. So it was a great combination as they were able to continue to develop Tim, and we know what he was able to do his next year, take off and win the Heisman Trophy. I think, Joe, by the way, when we talk about building a quarterback in the lab, Joe's not a bad quarterback to build as well, to put out there. Again, it's, what does he, how does he run the offense? What does he see? His running ability, I see as more power, straight line. He's not going to be as shifty as Hendon and what he was able to do kind of as a natural runner with football, but he obviously has mobility. Look at the Pittsburgh game right before he was injured when he had a long run. And there are ways that you can use him around the goal line with his size. So in terms of using Nico as a complement to Joe, I'm not sure there, but developing him and recognizing, okay, he's the next guy, similar to what Tebow did as a sophomore. Yeah, I think that can absolutely be a comparison.
Yeah, I don't know that, Joe.
And by the way, that's saying that is recognizing Tim Tebow had one of the great seasons of all time. He won a Heisman Trophy, putting up crazy numbers. So, but Nico as a rated prospect is actually not that far off from what people are saying he could become.
Yeah, Milton coming in for, let's say, Hendon Hooker because he has a bigger arm on a Hail Mary. I see that. I don't see a situation in which physically that Nico would necessarily be better. Maybe he's a more fluid runner is about the best, but then you get him hit. And
if he gets hurt and you've just injured your backup, I wouldn't do that. So
I wouldn't either.
Your future too
be a problem.
I mean, it's one thing if he's the first stringer and he gets hurt. I mean, that happens. It's another thing to put him out there in situal running plays, and he's the future of the franchise. Let me ask a couple of questions about Nico. 4 Downs brought to you by Andy Mason Real Estate, andymasonrealestate.com. Go to him. Over 40 years of experience in the Knoxville area. More questions about Nico, and Andy has the best service and the best prices in real estate in Knoxville. andymasonrealestate.com. 4 Downs now.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show. 4 Downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Okay, I'm going to throw this at each of you. And 4 situations, and you tell me if the fans start calling for Nico. Not that he plays, not that the coaches put him in, but the fans start calling for Nico to play. All right. Everything goes great. First down. they are in the college football playoff. That's an obvious no, correct?
Yeah, at that point, they're calling for Joe to win the Heisman.
Yes. And Joe to find some sort of waiver to come back another year.
Yeah.
All right. Second down, lost to Florida in September. A good portion of fans are calling for Nico to play. Start with Josh. Yay or nay?
Yay, because that'll be the first real opponent they play, with all due respect to Virginia. And if Tennessee loses at Florida, I think the fear from Tennessee fans will be that, is this program taken off, or was last year because of the guys we had? So they would then turn to, we got to get this fixed. Nico can be the guy to fix it.
Caleb.
I'm with Josh. Yay. Like, I don't even if it's a game where like Joe Milton throws for like 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, if they lose, I still think they would call for Nico at that point. So yeah, I'm a yay.
I thought that you guys would be split on that. I'm a little surprised. Okay, so going into the Alabama game, whether it's South Carolina, Texas A&M, or Florida, one loss going into the Alabama game, would fans start calling for Nico? That would be still a very respectable record, as Tennessee would be 6-1. So if they were to lose, let's say, to A&M going into a game at Alabama, would you hear the Nico shouts at that point significantly?
I will say nay to that one. Part of that would depend on how the game goes, for sure. If their defense just comes in and stifles Joe and he looks bad, then fans can say, actually, against higher level competition, not sure here. But I'll say nay in that scenario.
Caleb?
Yeah, Josh and I are like one and the same. I'm going to say nay too, but it depends on whether or not they're 6-1 with Joe Milton and putting up Josh numbers you expect from a Josh Heupel quarterback, or Joe Milton putting up numbers that Matt Sims was putting up in 2010. No disrespect to Matt Sims. Sorry, that was an unfair shot. But
Not disrespect Matt Sims. So we don't do any of that here. He is okay. Virginia. Joe Milton throws 2 interceptions. Let's go back in the opener. Joe Milton throws 2 interceptions.
Yay. Yay.
Josh, neither of you all. What if they win by 30?
I remember the reaction to the Bowling Green game when they won 38-6, and there was already panic that Monday or Friday. It was a Thursday night game. So, yay.
Really? 2? Well, okay, 1 interception.
That one maybe not. I mean, that could be like a tip pass 2. Then you've got a problem.
No tip pass. No tip pass.
Yeah, 1 I would say no. 2 I would say yes. So I've taken a lot of calls over the years, Dave. So yeah.
So fun. Okay, both of you guys. An interception. 1 interception. They win by a last-second field goal over Virginia in the opener.
What's the score on this last-second field goal?
It is 28-27.
Yeah, that's a yay. So you're kind of describing App State, where there was all kinds of panic there. Not necessarily a call for the quarterback in that game, but panic. So yeah, the panic in this spot would be about quarterback. So a big yay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fifth down like the old Colorado game. Dennis Dodd just says, "Play the Nico guy."
Let him show his worth. I love the verbiage as well. Whispers is what Dennis Dodd said. There are whispers.
Yeah,
I know. I've done a lot of.
Are there like some staff members hanging out behind the bushes?
I don't know. I've done a lot of interviews, and I've done a lot of interviews that were sourced, and nobody ever whispered to me, not one time.
It wouldn't play great for the audience here, but we should have done this segment just whispering to each other.
I mean,
not the quarterbacks.
I've had coaches call me and said, "I'm leaving this place. They passed me over," but it was a cell phone, and they spoke in a normal tone.
We had the Brady Hoke text, which was great when all those records came out, and it was all caps. So that would be the bizarro version of this, whispering maybe in small font versus all caps from Brady Hoke.
Yes, Mr. Jones says sweet nothings. How about that? just whispering sweet nothings. All right, so I got to get your thoughts on what the Vols do in the SEC tournament. I know Caleb has a follow-up to that, but my thinking is they should throw the thing and get best prepared for the NCAA tournament. And I'm dead serious.
Yeah. I wouldn't throw it. I would just you really want to play well today, because if you're not playing well against Ole Miss, then that's a sign of another problem. Confidence won't be high next
Not if
week.
you're playing your entire second string, like the last 5 guys on the bench, dude. I'm not kidding. What's the point of this tournament?
Well, the point of this game, I think, is you're able to actually go through some real action to run and real communication to work on the defensive end without Zakai Ziegler. Play well against Missouri, but if you lose the game, not a big deal. I don't think Tennessee's going to win the SEC tournament. If you can win the tournament, that'd be great. I don't think it actually helps you in the NCAA tournament, but it would give you something to cherish from this season. But because there's no Zakai, if Zakai were playing on Saturday, they might have beaten Auburn, maybe not. But the defensive end is my bigger concern than the offensive end, actually, without Zakai. And I'm not the first to express that concern. But work on some things today. Play well against Missouri, which is an NCAA tournament team. If you win, okay, great. See what you can do on Saturday. But if not, you lose. Rest up. Get ready for the NCAA tournament. But you don't want to lose today. Don't throw the Thursday game against Ole Miss. You're also going to drop a seed line potentially, and then you could be in a 4-5 matchup in the NCAA tournament. That's no good.
Okay, throw it tomorrow. Just throw in the towel tomorrow.
I mean,
just like Rocky should have when Drago's beaten Apollo Creed. He should have.
Herm Edwards in the chat says here that you play to win the game. Okay, I agree with Herm.
No, you don't.
Not every game. That's right.
There's a draft pick or rest.
Ask the Sixers. Ask the Sixers, who are a title contender now because they lost on purpose for like 5 years.
So. How's the process doing? They're still working on it. But you can't be too scared. Like Kevin Durant's maybe done for the regular season, getting injured in warmups. At some point, you got to go out there and do something.
Quite an off season for your Raiders. They ran off a pretty good quarterback. Strong.
Oh, he's talking to Josh.
Having internet issues, Dave. So I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, I texted Josh at one point when he left, and I'm like, what's wrong with Derek Carr there? And he didn't respond.
Look, I'm ready for whichever
Prescott. I don't know if that's a shot at your team or mine, but he's as good as Dak Prescott.
Yeah, things are going great for the Cowboys there with that quarterback position too.
No.
So, we have results that count. So I'm ready to spin it either way for Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, because I think one of those guys is the next quarterback for the Raiders. Could be wrong, but that seems to be where things are trending. So I'm ready to spin away from everything that I said back during the fall about them as NFL prospects.
Yeah, the difference is the Raiders weren't paying $500 million to Carr. All right, Josh, great stuff. Listen to him on the Sports Animal from noon to 3. You're a scholar, steward, and a fantastic young man.
Thank you very much.